The whole idea of this competition is to give these guys an exciting project as the focal point around which they're applying all of the knowledge that they learn in their curriculum. And the reason it's so important is because when we go through sort of our education and go through learning all the theory through our curricula, whatever they are, you're looking at this is all very theory, all the theory. When you start actually applying it into practical things, there's a big disconnect. Okay, so what happens is, for example, you learn about thermodynamics, or you learn about some of the forces that are there, in like statics, for example. But how does that practically, relate to what projects you're going to be working on as an engineer or as a designer? And there is this disconnect. Okay, so what happens is, when you look at the industry perspective, you hire a brand new graduate coming out of any college. If they haven't had a chance to practically work on what they've learned, they come out of college with a lot of theory, fantastic ideas, but unfortunately when they start trying to implement these, they run into a lot of different hurdles. Sometimes you end up designing parts that can never be manufactured, or you design lots of different parts that can be manufactured but can never be assembled. So all these little things, the only way of avoiding it normally is through a lot of intensive training after you start your first job, or through practical experience. And when you start doing that, when you're working and trying to deliver for a company, they're not going to be so patient. Right? All of us are under pressure as companies to deliver profits. And so when we start looking at it that way, then you want to ideally bring in new employees that are able to deliver from day one. And we find, I say that because I've also gone through the same sort of formula SAE program when I was studying. And I firmly believe in the whole concept of all of this, is that when we hire guys who've gone through any of the design contest, we find guys who've actually practically done the work. So they're able to design things, they're able to understand what their design means to be able to, the manufacturability side of it, and the assembly side of it. So you end up having more realistic designs. You don't have wild ideas that you can never put into practice. This is a big and very important step. And so that's the reason why, in fact, we need to have more competitions like this, because we need to get more and more students involved in similar things, so that we have more, I would say, engineering graduates that are productive as soon as they start their first jobs. Well, it's still in its infancy, okay, in India, but there have been improvements, on year. So one of the biggest things this year is, having both the Baja and the Formula student competitions at the same time. While it's a little bit of a nightmare from the organizational point of view and the logistics point of view, it's really a huge advantage for the students, because you get guys who are doing the Baja cars who look at what their colleagues, counterparts are doing with the Formula cars, and they're able to pull some ideas out of this. Now the Formula guys look at some of the Baja cars and they're able to pull some ideas out of it, because a Baja car has to be a lot more robust and the impact loads and so on that car experiences are a lot higher than the Formula car. So some of that stuff these guys get to learn, and some of the design optimization side of it, what the Formula cars are doing, the Baja guys get to know. So it's a nice way of educating each other. I mean, so it's really a nice thing to see this year. So I don't see I wouldn't say there's a specific trait in terms of only Indian cars, but one, I guess, comment I would make is that I find that a lot of our guys are missing the spirit of the competition, okay? And the spirit of the competition is to do all of this yourself. And that's one area where I think we have a lot of work to do, because we see cars coming in, but we see things where they've gotten help, for example, to the welding on the chassis. They've gotten help to get the bits machined. Yes, okay, there are some practical issues over there. A lot of the colleges don't have facilities for them to use. But I think still that is one aspect I would like to see the students take ownership and start to do on their own. And that is something that's quite different when you go to the international level competitions, because there the students really do all of the work themselves. For sure. I mean, I think one of the reasons why, you know, people like Claude and Pat and Steve and I are involved is because our goal is to push the students to perform at their best, and we are benchmarking them against what we would like to see, or what we do see in terms of international level of competition. So we understand that there is a little bit of a disconnect, because those guys have been doing it for so many more years than our guys have. But our idea is that we keep pushing our students to improve every year. And so I would say, yeah, you wouldn't see, it shouldn't be too many years if the progression goes like we have, like we've seen it going with some of the top teams, that they are challenging to be in the top 10 in some of the international competitions. I love it because it gives me a chance to interact with all these young minds and who've got so much enthusiasm, and it brings me back to sort of reality. It recharges my batteries because it brings the love of the job back. You know, ultimately all of us are engineers, and so when you see the enthusiasm of all these guys working on their car, and it's sort of, you know, we go back to our younger days for somebody like me and some of the other judges, and we enjoy the enthusiasm, and it makes us you know, it gives us so much pleasure to be associated with this, and because it gives us our youth back in a way.